Fog everywhere, fog up the river where it flows among green eights and meadows, fog down the river where it flows, rolls, defiled among the tires of shipping and waterside pollutions of a great and dirty city, a fog on the Essex of marshes, fog on the Kentish heights, fog creeping into the cabooses of coiler brigs, for fog lying out on the yards and hovering in the rigging of great ships, fog drooping on the gunwales of barges and small boats, fog in the eyes and throats of ancient Greenwich pensioners wheezing by the firesides of their wards, fog in the stem and bowl lot of the afternoon pipe of the raffle skipper down in his close cabin, fog cruelty pinching the toes and fingers of his shivering little apprentice, boy on deck, chance people on the bridges peeping over the parapets into a sky of fog, with fog all around them, as if they were up in a balloon and hanging in the misty clouds, got looming through the fog and divers places in the streets, much as the sun may from the spongy fields be seen by loom, be seen to loom by husbandman and plowboy. Whoa, there you go, boy. Most of the shops lighted 2 hours before their time, as the gas seems to know, for it has a haggard and unwilling look. The raw afternoon is rawest, and the dense fog is densest, and the muddy streets are muddiest near that leaned-in headed old obstruction appropriate ornament for the threshold of a leaden headed old corporation, a Temple Bar, and hard by Temple Bar and Lincoln's Inn Hall at the very heart of the fog sits the Lord High Chancellor and his High Court of Chancery, rapid monopoly. I believe that while all human life is sacred, there's nothing wrong with the death penalty if you can trust a legal system, simplicity, and that no one but a moron would ever trust a legal system, rapid never ending a spittum. Today I wore a pair of faded old jeans and a plain gray baggy shirt. I hadn't even taken a shower, and I did not put on an ounce of makeup. I grabbed a worn out black oversized jacket to cover myself with, even though it is warm outside. I have made conscious decisions lately to look like less of what I felt a male would want to see. I want to disappear, rapper, in the rearview mirror, intimidated, old traumas triggered, and fearing for my safety. I did what I felt I needed to, spin a baboon, Scooby-Doo. I understand now that the only time people don't feel guilty is when black people don't feel guilty is when they've actually done something wrong, because that relieves them of the cognitive dissonance of spending our ending for all eternity. Walter made me understand why we have to reform a system of criminal justice that continues to treat people better if they are rich and guilty than if they are poor and innocent. A system that denies the poor of the legal help they need, that makes wealth and status more important than must be changed. Walter's case taught me that fear and anger are a threat to justice. Fear and anger are a threat to justice. They can infect a community, a state, or a nation and make us blind, irrational, and dangerous. I reflected on how mass imprisonment has littered the national landscape with carceral monuments of reckless and excessive punishment, and ravaged communities with our hopeless willingness to condemn and discard the most vulnerable among us. I told the congregation that Walter's case had taught me that the death penalty is not about whether people deserve to die for their crimes they commit. The real question of capital punishment in this country is, do we deserve to kill? The raps I begin to spill. People with low self-confidence and self-esteem often feel nervous about antagonizing others and tend to rate others' needs more highly than their own. Well, what there go? I don't believe in God today. I don't believe in people. I don't believe in people either. Purple Snapple, a traitor to both sides, the ultimate asshole. Your friends dress like your enemies, and your enemies dress like your friends. In the end, spent their end and again and again. As this scale, capitalism, man, education, and the justice system, the spit, redeemer, infinitum, the spit, never end, spitting. What my spent her and again off the top of my head. She always asked the irrelevant question if it mattered. It didn't matter in terms of of strategy of the case, whether a defendant did it or not. What mattered was the evidence against him, the proof, and if and how it could be neutralized. My job was to bury the proof, the color of the proof, a shade of gray. Gray was the color of a reasonable doubt. Wow, I shout and I pout. Just like freedom, truth is not cheap. Yet both are worth more than all the gold in the world. But what is freedom if there is no truth? And what is truth if there is no freedom? Both are worth fighting for because one without the other would be in hell. Spent rapping, I begin to dwell. I really smell. Returns righteous people, what's theirs, and deprive sinners what isn't theirs. Spent on a burr. The two men sat silent for a little while, and then Lord Peter said, "Do you like your job?" The detective considered the question and replied, "Yes, I do. I know it is to be useful, and I am fitted to it. I do it quite well, not with inspiration, perhaps, but sufficiently well to take pride in it. It is full of variety, and it forces one to keep up to the mark and not get slack. And there's a future to it. Yes, I like it. Why?" "Oh, nothing," said Peter. "It's a hobby to me, you see. I took it up with when the bottom of things was rather knocked out for me because it was so damned exciting. And the worst of it is I enjoy up to a point. If it was all on paper, I'd enjoy every bit of it. I love the beginning of the job when one doesn't know any of the people and it's just exciting and amusing. But if it comes to really running down a live person and getting him hanged or even quadded, poor devil, there don't seem as if there it wasn't any excuse for me butting him, since I don't have to make me living by it, and I feel if I ought to ever to find an amusing, but I do spend toucan Scooby-Doo a spinner and look at the asshole. Not a care in the world today. I fish. Tomorrow I blow up a muskew. Smart head hiding in plain sight rhyming. Being on the wrong side of a pissing contest is never a good thing. Rain, ding, ding. He told me that if I hunt up, he'd do it. He would commit suicide. He told me that if I called the cops, he would kill every single one of them. And I knew that he had the potential and the means to do it. Spit it, rap it, and they're ending again. The bad things that happen to us don't define us. It's just important sometimes that people understand where we're coming from. Spend rhyming like bum. Then let's get to work. Sorry, shit. We must stop these guys again. The men nodded. Stone face. Was it a really deja vu all over again? Gang. 25 elite law enforcement officers against 6 racist assholes 4-1. Pretty good odds. Wrap it up. Gentlemen, a court is no better than each man of you sitting before me on this jury. Gentlemen, a court is no better than each man of you sitting before me on this jury. A court is only as sound as its jury, and a jury is only as sound as the men who make it up. For having been educated in a convent, she knew nothing. Being educated in a convent, she knew nothing of the customs or manners of the world, and found it difficult to understand that among people Pickwen among themselves on their liberty, it was to the custom to shut a man up in perpetual confinement to enable him to pay his debts. But no. He is guilty, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, guilty of wanting to be part of something that never wanted him. I'm spitting out no. Never forget that the ones who are enforcing the laws are far more guilty than the ones penalized for their crimes. Rhymes. In this world, those who value peace more than justice deserve neither. Rapper, redeemer. How statutory bodies waste public money and fruitless litigation to satisfy misplaced ego is demonstrated by this petition. Repetition, infinite. Our justice system isn't just built on facts. It's deeply influenced by image, gender, race, and bias. When the predator doesn't fit the profile of a gender double standard in sexual assault cases. Blog. I'm a syllable warthog. A goblin syllable is like a hungry hippo. Whoa, there I go. There is a cultural disconnect here. A society struggles to see women as predators, perpetrators of sexual violence. We're taught to believe women can't be that kind of violent. That belief is not just outdated, it's dangerous. When a predator doesn't fit the profile of a gender double standard in sexual assault cases. Well, there you go. I'm spanning out. Syllable hog blog. So whoa, no. Justice was rarely just. Justice was rarely just and almost never equitable. I learned that lesson fast. A criminal court looked nothing like it did on TV. It was filled with sadness, lost opportunity, and broken people desperate for redemption. The criminal law's machine so rough and dangerous that we can use it only with every safety device attached. Wrap. The essence of justice lies in punishment proportional to the harm, not merely to restore what was taken or lost, but to uphold the moral and social order, affirm the dignity of the wronged, and deter future transgressions, acknowledging that white restoration heals in its many forms. Retribution primarily balances the scales of accountability, wrapping never endingly for all eternity. Is the sheriff interested in fervent ends of justice, asks the press, or is he interested in making a grandstand play for personal glory and acclaim? Rampant away goes today. Today's judicial system is less about justice and more about the system. Today's judicial system is less about justice and more about the system. Today's judicial system is less about justice and more about the system. I spit them, never end them, I wrap them. Perhaps I thought a tape was effectively decriminalized here, if not in the letter of the law, then in the practice of it. I spit it, wrap it. We can choose to be the incarnation nation or once again become the land of the free. Indeed, correctional services is often the most misunderstood and maligned aspect of the justice system. This is one of the main reasons I took pen to the paper, metaphorically speaking, of course, and I wrote this tale. I am currently working on a second book to hopefully complete a trilogy, wrapping our endingly and absurd thing for the murderous state to plead. But as always, the massive violence of the state was justice, was law and order, and resistance to a perpetual violence was an act of terror. Rapper forever. Racism is a mental disorder and should have been classified as such ages ago. Well, there I go. In criminal court, the defendant is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. These two cornerstones of criminal law, the presumption of innocence and the requirement of a very high standard of proof, are designed to tip the scales of justice in favor of criminal defendants in recognition of the tremendous imbalance of power between individual citizens and the state, but no equivalent consideration is given to the safety and the well-being of crime victims who bear a witness in court, despite the very real imbalance of power that so often obtains between a victim and perpetrator. Rapper forever, spitter. Justice system, rapper forever. Justice system expert, rapper forever. Justice may not only be done, it must be seen to be done. Rapper, bum bum bum, and a gum gum gum. Justice delayed is justice denied. Justice delayed is justice denied. And winning or losing the case is the prime motive for any litigant as a party in the adversarial system, because the system is built to see the issue of the complaint as a dispute rather than as an issue of social or legal wrong or as a matter of injustice. A decision pronounced by the court therefore favors one party and is often against another. When two parties are involved in a legal disagreement, rather than viewing the legal wrong or as a matter of injustice, the courtrooms reduce the concerns of litigants as technical matters, the courtrooms as the implementers of the laws, as a valiant guardians of the law, and not as a protector of the rights of the victims. The entire system is built around laws and legal processes. A victim has been granted little roles or rights in the entire processes. Rhymes of blah blah blah. The fruit of courtrooms are created for the purpose of delivering justice to litigants. The litigant is seen as one who is at the receiving end of the entire system. The judges and lawyers occupy the central position within the courtroom, rather than acting as the service providers. Various objectives influence the process approach and environment in the courtrooms are not litigant friendly, but daily nitty gritty bureaucratic procedures and the technicalities observed in the courtrooms further create trouble for litigants who may lack legal knowledge or awareness of, and may hamper the smooth process of the law of the black and white rules of law, but clouded with the shades of the subjectives exhibited by different actors, and the outcome or the decisions of the courts are determined by various factors apart from the legal rules. I rule and you drool. Women are infantilized, demeaned, deprived of dignity, denied their rights in all in the name of the rule of the law. The elite approach followed within the courtrooms often asserts supremacy while excluding the poor women, children, Dalits, tribals, and other subaltern groups. In itself, a court cannot change the law, yet the court has the power to interpret and implement the given law in a sensitive manner while upholding the constitutional spirit and values, and that is what a litigant expects and society hopes for. However, that is This is not happening. Rapping there, and he law is a blunt tool, and though it makes tall claims of being objective and neutral in itself, the law is fragile and will not smash a patriarchy. Spent rapping for eternity. Patriarchy. Rather, the courts have always favored the power structure and shielded those who are resourceful. The courtrooms themselves as a symbol of authority, rapping their enemy authority, defend the values of supremacy and protect the oppressive and regressive system. However, those on the margins, with their conviction and belief in the values of democracy, justice, and the rule of law, need to shake the system with individual or vote collective action of a marginalized and challenging the power structure, and are compelling the state and the society to make social and political transformation are at a larger level. Angela Davis said that in a racist society, it is not enough to be a non-racist. We must be anti-racist. Similarly, here it may be derived that in a society it is not enough to be a non. We must be anti. The women with their sheer will and conviction are marching ahead to smash, using law as an instrument of change. However, what is required is a radical interpretation of constitutional values by the courts, and this should be strengthened by assuring the equal representation of women within the judiciary at all levels, to open up the possibility of non-discrimination within the hostile settings. Wrapping their end, and when groups who have been victimized organized to call attention to be violence just directed at them, they had been historically vilified as troublemakers and persecuted on suspicion of desire to subvert the social order by means of violence, rapid, never ending, for eternity. I spit this in the case of rape. The presumption of innocence for the accused often translates into a simple presumption that the accuser is lying, and victims often feel they, rather than perpetrators, are on trial, rapid and denial. Denials enters the river in Egypt, I said, spitting again, until off pop of my head. We will not be able to eliminate racism until we correctly classify it as mental illness. Never confuse justice with law. The law upholds authority in the system. Justice upholds integrity and the truth. Rapping to you, never endingly the justice system to you. A legal system that supports its people when they are in the wrong is problematic. Normalize and believe in everything you hear. Normalize fact checking. Rapping our end in the justice system spatting. And great crises. The written law. And great crises, the written law has always gone down before the unwritten spitting. It's not justice when the courts play in favor of the accused. Our nation's overcrowded jails, prisons, and detention centers are an indictment of our criminal justice system. It is impossible to visit these institutions and not be struck by the inhumane treatment of the people serving time, and the number of black and brown bodies confined in cages like animals. Then these men and women are America's latest crop of strange fruit, spitting their endingly to you. Eve ate the forbidden fruit, gave it Adam, wrapping their endem. I love it when a justice system becomes the justice system, spitting their end and spit them. The presence of those cameras finally acknowledges. He said to me that justice systems are anywhere, anytime, have never cared whether justice was achieved or not. Like Roman games, justice systems are ways for unjust governments, and there is not other sort of government to be enormously entertaining with real lives at stake. Wait, never end, spend all night and all day. Of all the justices, restitution is the hardest one, for it requires fairness to the past and to the present, two things that are not meant to meet, but which in human claims often do. On restitution, spend conclusion, and criminal justice system, you see the worst people on their best behavior, unlike the civil justice system where the best people behave at their worst. Now it hurts all the knowledge in the universe. The voice of mass is no proof of sanity. The law school notions about the virtue of the adversarial system, of the system's checks and balances, of the search for truth, had long since eroded like the faces of statues from the other civilizations. The law was not about truth. It was about negotiation, amelioration, manipulation. I didn't deal in guilt and innocence because everybody was guilty of something, but it didn't matter because every case I took on was a house built on a foundation poured by overworked and underpaid laborers. They cut corners, they made mistakes, and then they painted over the mistakes with lies, rhymes all night. I'm nice. rhymes. I'm wise. My job was to peel away the paint and find the cracks, to work my fingers and tools into those cracks and widen them to make them so big that either the house fell down or fallen or failing, that my client slipped through. Well, there he goes. I was spitting never in Winnie the Pooh, spit with Scooby Doo. He takes us to a beautiful building where in 1754 a man killed his own brother. The brother's father resolved to the building this palace as a school, as a way of keeping alive the memory of his murdered son. I say that surely the son who had committed the murder would also be remembered. It's not like that, says Samuel. And in our culture, the criminal shares his guilt with everyone who allowed him to commit the crime. When a man is murdered, the person who sold him the weapon is also responsible before God. The only way in which the father could correct what he perceived as his own mistake was to transform the tragedy into something useful for others. Rapper forever. The axe decapitates the head. Society's ills get quickly shed. Can we trust what we don't see? The mass executioner's decree, a death by hacks couldn't be worse. Carnifex of the jingling cup purse. Blood is split to shake the thirst. Blood is split to slake the first. In the name of God, the law comes first. A pantomime of barbarity to lose one's head so publicly and then be held mockingly. The crowd disperses hastily, rapping never endingly. Spent for eternity. Ignorance has no rewards, whether she knew it or not. Prepared me to fight for even my most damaged defendants, rapping their ending. I believe that there are 4 institutions in American history that have shaped our approach to race and justice, but remain poorly understood. The first, of course, is slavery. This was followed by the reign of terror that shaped the lives of people of color following the collapse of the Reconstruction until World War II. The third institution is Jim Crow, is the legalized racial segregation and suppression of basic rights and that define the American era. The fourth institution is incarceration. Incarceration spent rapid equation, decapitation. So many of us have become afraid and angry. We become so fearful and vengeful that we've thrown away children, discarded the disabled, and sanctioned the imprisonment of the sick and weak. Not because they are a threat to public safety or beyond rehabilitation, but because we think it makes us seem tough, less broken. I thought of the victims of violent crime and the survivors of murdered loved ones and how we've presumed them to recycle their pain and anguish and give it back to the defenders we prosecute. I thought of the many ways we've legalized vengeful and cruel punishments, how we've allowed our victimization to justify the victimization of others. We've submitted to the harsh instinct to crush those among us whose brokenness is not visible, but simply punishing the broken, walking away from them or hiding them from sight only ensures that they remain broken. And what we do too, there is no wholeness outside of a reciprocal humanity. Rapid monopoly sloppy law must neither be taken as gospel. Today's law may become tomorrow's crime. Today's crime may become tomorrow's law. It's about the laws, not about justice as a system we've put in place because we can't have justice. Rapping again, a weapon of spectus. As I waited, my mind filled in the blanks, envisioned the future, wrote a nightmare of a story. Every black mother, a sister, and wife in America has written some version of their story in their mind. And that story, our promises to take care of our sons, brothers, and husbands turn into lies. The daily heartbreak. Far too many of the story has become real. True is an American terror, horror. Bear rapper forever. Preserving the difference between the rule of law and the law of rule is essential for democracy. Or spend never endingly for all eternity. What kind of justice system is it that lets innocent people go to jail for things they didn't do? The kind of with no justice spent rapping forever. Spit this. Brent knew that the federal justice system had been on the concept of that you cannot fight city jail. It had been constructed to deprive all defendants of a fair trial by putting most of the power in the hands of the prosecutors and trying judges' hands with mandatory minimum sentences. Everyone in the justice system, especially the judges, knew that it was rigged from the moment of arrest, spent wraps in a mess. Each one of us have our own justice system. What we think is correct, what we think is based on our judgment of what's right and what's not. We punish people or we let them go. Well, the law doesn't always know what it's doing. The law doesn't always know what it's doing. Humans have a far greater instinct of what's right in life than the lawyers do. Spin rapper and Toucan Scooby-Doo. We are a country that could not keep Jinnah's vision for equal rights, privileges, and obligations, cannot stop violence towards minorities, could not win a war against against vast racial disparities. Retrograde enemy cannot conquer a disease of corruption and bad governance and cannot bring itself to trust a government. The effect of the illusion is profound, distorting as it does the natural hostility between hunter and hunted, transforming it until it resembles a relationship more symbiotic than adversarial. Then that is the lie. And when the roles and perfectly performed deceit surpasses itself, becoming manipulation on a grand scale, ultimately an act of betrayal, because what occurs in an interrogation room is indeed little more than a carefully staged drama, a choreographed a performance that allows a detective and his suspect to find a common ground where none exists. They're in a common ground. They're in a carefully controlled purgatory. The guilt proclaim their malefactions, though rarely in any form that allows for contrition or resembles an unequivocal admission. Spitting a lack of compassion is a first blood bite on the democracy. A lack of compassion is the first blood bite on the skin of democracy, wrapping for eternity, and made themselves a whole other boy in their minds and replaced me with him, spent wrapping the American justice system. Recognize that the legal adversarial system is a flawed way to find the truth. Gentlemen, a court is no better than each man of you sitting before me in the jury. A court is only as sound as its jury, and a jury is only as sound as the men who make it up. Rub-a-dub, scrub. Some say the universe arcs towards justice. I think more often it requires the occasional push. Justice on earth is no legal matter. If one soul is hurt, all must rise together. The justice system rampant forever. I recognize that the legal adversarial system as a flawed way to find the truth. Been there endlessly to you. I can't conceive of no greater mistake or more disastrous in the end to religion, if not to society, than that of trying to make a charity do the work of justice. Span I mustus. You are more free if you're rich and guilty than being poor and innocent. Honest, spent rapping a benda. Onset, honeset. You are more free if you are rich and guilty than being poor. Honeset, spent rapping a spet. You were guilty. You were guilty until you were proved until you proved yourself innocent. You were guilty until you proved yourself innocent. And the government's idea of justice was to describe you were guilt first and then lock you up so you couldn't prepare a defense, let alone pay for one. But no one, and I mean no one, escapes from the camp. Anyone who tries will be shot along with many others in order to teach a lesson no one will ever forget. Spent raps in a mess. Justice is just a theory, a word for something that doesn't exist. Spitting all of this wraps in a mist. Spent onto my infinite syllable pit. I'm the rhyme infinitus. We will appoint as justices, constables, sheriffs, or other officials, only men that know the law of the realm are minded to keep it well. And as rapidly begin to dwell. Today, millions of people from around the world are tuned into this 100-year-old courthouse designed in the neoclassical style and listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It's a building that stands as a proud symbol of American justice. Over the last several weeks, a murder trial has been unfolding here, and the media attention it's gotten has been ferocious, spent rapping atrocious, rapping emotions. When the prosecution is confronted with concrete evidence of a defendant's innocence during a trial or investigation, or even after a jury renders an erroneous guilty verdict, the prosecutor must come forward as an office of the court to make sure that justice is done. Defense attorneys have no such obligation, even when they know their clients are guilty, rapping, spitting for eternity, infinity. Bad judgment is a amnesty would haunt him for the rest of his life because he was the only person left alive who knew for certain that he was innocent. Spit it. The truth continues to be unimportant in this case. The big city boy is good. I'm going to enjoy this trial. Rapper in denial. Your objection is sustained, Mr. Blake. Please refrain from using the words crime or crime scene, Mr. Weaver. These terms call for a legal conclusion that the evidence has not yet established. Zach must almost laughed out loud at the Judge Shipley's ruling on his objection. The jury had just heard the trial judge say that there had been insufficient evidence offered thus far to establish murder. Rapper forever. If two people were present, then a grenade was exploded, and one of those people had lost their life. Which of the two would be more likely to have exploded? The grenade of the one who who lived or the one who died, the one who lived, of course. And why do you say that? Of course, to put into lay a terminology. The one who pulls the pen and throws the grenade has the element of surprise, rhymes, ice, knows which way he's going to throw the grenade and approximately how long he has to go to get until the hell out of there. Spit rapping of rappers beware, which with over 20 years on the circuit court bench and a neutral position with no skin in the game. Judge Paul Shipley was the wisest man in the room, spitting toucan Scooby-Doo never endingly to you. At the end of the day, however, these men who are scientists, people lie, cheat, steal, even commit murder, or on the contrary, science always tells the truth, spitting never endingly to you. Weaver smiled as he remembered word for word the criminal procedure professors, free rules lecture for about criminal defense lawyers. 1, get the money up front. 2, the client does the time, not you. And 3, get the money up front. Zachary Blake was a guy who always got paid one way or another. A rapper lawyer forever, spent never ender. Losing was out of the question. Spent rapping. If the jury acquitted Jack, their verdict would brand Weaver as the loser of the biggest case in the Manistee history. The community will remember local judges, defense lawyers, and fellow prosecutors will remember Weaver could be the prosecutor who couldn't convict a bombing guy. Spent rhyme, ice. I spent their end and why. Sophisticated vocabulary used by unoccupied education, my psychological incompetence was validate and elaborate what I'm saying to be clearly adamant, randomly, consciously, accurately, incoherently, or neutral, and subject to the subject terrence to be covered to be autism, the American justice system, expert, with spitting them there randomly. I got them Jason Voorhees eyes. I can't laugh or cry. I'm the American justice system expert, all right? I'm high on ice, spitting rhyme. I got the Michael Myers guys. I'm high on ice. I got the Jason Voorhees eyes. I'm American justice system, all right? All night, spitting on ice.